Okay, so this Swami, and it's just interesting in terms of manifestation. It doesn't quite do the daydream thing, but it's interesting still, I think enough. And that is a Swami, according to the autobiographer, ends up taking on some of the manifestations of his, let's say, pupils. I'm not sure what the correct word would be. In order to keep them from manifesting illness or something like that. That actually kind of takes it out of their escrow, goes ahead and gets rid of it. And I'm not planning on doing anything like that. But I'm just trying to explain
it. Good, because that's not possible.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Somebody just made that up.
Okay.
But this is why. People don't want to own what they've got going on vibrationally. But you might as well own it because it's manifesting all over the place. This may be the easiest way to hear this. We've been saying this for a while, but you'll hear it in a different light now. Most of the physical human world is looking at manifestations. That's how they evaluate success. It's why they write autobiographies or biographies or anything. They sift through manifestations and categorize it into subjects, experiences, into piles. So here's the 15th century and the 16th century and the 17th century. Here's the people that lived in that time and the people that lived in that time. Or in current days, here are the Democrats and here are the Republicans and here are the independents and here are the Catholics and here are the Mormons and here are the atheists and here are the straights and here are the gays and here are the blacks and here are the whites and here are the good ones and here are the bad ones. In other words, they just constantly making piles out of everything. And then most spend their life trying to articulate the piles, to understand the piles, to more clearly identify the piles, to relate to the piles. And it's chaos and it's unproductive and it's unsatisfying. It's sort of like going through the motions of life. We see just two piles in this current moment. There's the pile under the influence of inner being and the pile not under the influence of inner being. And in every one of those piles, there are Democrats under the influence and not. There are Republicans under the influence and not. Every pile has those two piles. So why not just make those two piles? Or why not pay any attention to those piles? Why not just notice which pile you're in? Am I under the influence or not? So when you're under the influence of your inner being, now you're a vibrational match to everything that you've been asking for. There's a clarity there. Now take this idea of piles. We know you understand it. It's so simple, it's insulting. And then from the perspective of those two piles, daydream. When you're in the not alignment pile, that's when you work hard and struggle. Abraham, is there any blur of the piles? Can I be in both piles at the same time? Well, this thought could take you there, that thought could take you there, this thought could take you there, that thought could take you there, this thought could take you there, this thought could take you there. But if you are deliberately wanting to make dominant the thoughts that take you to the influence of who you really are, it won't be long before that's just where you'll hang around. And then we offer a vibration to Esther and we give her time to find words that represent the vibration, and she reaches for words big enough to describe the feeling of empowerment and joy of getting out ahead of it, the difference between trying to clean something up. So what we're asking you all to try to do just a little bit, instead of taking life as it comes and reacting to it, we're asking you to not make such a big deal about life as it's coming. Just put it in one big statement that says, oh yeah, that's that. And instead ask yourself to remember or reach for, to isolate and practice those feelings of elation. You've got some of them already, you remember them. Esther remembers the day Jerry and Esther met Elsie the cat. Elsie. It was a Louisiana cat. It was a little cat. It was in Lake Charles. Elsie was the obvious name. And Jerry and Esther had an agreement that they would have no cat. And Esther had a vortex full of cats. And so did Jerry. He just didn't know it. He had a vortex full of happiness, and he didn't relate cat with happiness. So they're at a RV park in Lake Charles, and Jerry is checking the air and the tires, and Elsie, formerly known as something else, was rubbing on Jerry's legs, and Esther could hear him talking to her, and he was saying, well, hello, little lady. And she was saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And he was saying, I don't want you to love me. And she was saying, I can't help myself, you are so lovable. And Esther could hear it, and she thought to herself, there is something going on here that I want in on. So she watched Jerry, and Jerry went over to the office where the lady who had registered them was, and Esther followed him, sort of like the Pink Panther. Behind this tree, behind this tree, behind this tree, and listened outside the door. And she heard Jerry say, who does this little cat belong to? And the lady said, someone just dumped it off here. And Esther thought, and so Esther didn't say anything to Jerry. Jerry didn't say anything to Esther. And that night, well after dark, someone is knocking at the door. And it is this woman. She has this cat in her arms. And she says, my husband and I have talked about this, and we think you should take this cat with you. In their monster bus. But they were only one night away from home. And Esther said, I signed a prenuptial agreement. You have no idea what a long story this is. That it is so unlikely, but we'll talk about it. Thank you very much. And so in bed that night, Esther couldn't sleep because she so wanted the cat. And in bed that night, Jerry couldn't sleep because he so didn't want the cat. And Esther said, what do you think about this? If when we wake up in the morning, that cat's nowhere around, we'll just get in our bus and off we'll go, and that'll be the end of it. But if this little cat is waiting at our doorstep, then we'll take her with us. And Jerry said, all right. So they got up before dawn, had breakfast. Esther opened all of the window shades. She's looking out across, and in her mind she's saying, here, kitty, 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 kitty. And then no cat. And so she said, all right. Jerry went out, brought the hoses in. Esther brought the rooms in. Everything was stowed. Esther sat in the seat, turned the big diesel engine over. It has to idle for 5 minutes before you drive it. And as soon as the engine started, way off in the distance, the little cat is jumping through the tall grass. You can see her head every now and again. She came right to the door of the motorhome. Jerry opened the door and said, well, little lady, I guess you're going to Texas. And in she came. Now, isn't that just the perfect story? Isn't that just a getting out there ahead of it story? Isn't that just something that could never be but did become story? Do you know that everything that you want has a story just like that? With all the facets that are important, with every obstacle. Esther did not think that there was a greater obstacle in the world. Esther called the office and said, we've got a cat. Will you go get some cat food and a litter box and a cat bed? And Yoli hung up the phone and said to Tracy, they're bringing a cat home. And Tracy said, no. They ran over a cat. They saw a cat. They have a picture of a cat. There's no way that they're bringing a cat home. No one could believe that they brought a cat home. Now, it may not seem like a very big story because it was just somebody didn't want a cat and somebody wanted a cat. But do you know, you play both roles inside yourself on every subject in the world. You want more money, but you don't believe more money. You want a better relationship, but you don't believe a better relationship. In other words, you play both roles that Jerry and Esther were playing about everything that matters to you. And the universe knows the way around your resistance, just like the universe knew the way around Jerry's resistance. That cat was the most lovely little beast in their life. They'd come home from a trip and Elsie would come running. Esther's up in the top of the treehouse one day and she said, "Where's Elsie?" And Jerry said, "I think I hear her coming from over there." So Elsie comes running from over there. She's at the base of the treehouse. Jerry's down there too. Jerry says, "Go see Esther." She climbs up the tree and leaped 12 feet across from a tree right into Esther's arms. She was like a little psychic cat. She was a representative from the universe that had come to deliver constant messages to them. They were in the office one day and Elsie is meowing. And Esther said, "What do you want?" And she said, "Food." And Esther said, "I don't know where it is." And Elsie said, "It's over here." So she went over and put her hand on the cupboard where it was, and Esther opened it up and there it was. This is a vibrational being in a vibrational universe who has intentions too. There are all kinds of intentions all around this universe that are just right for you. There are facets and phases and opportunities and things. There are ways to open you up to anything. There is nothing that you want that you currently don't believe that your inner being can't lead you to believing, you see. All things are possible. There is nothing that you cannot be or do or have. There is nothing that is outside the limits of your creating. And your inner being knows what your logical path of least resistance is to every single one of those. And so if you would just decide that you're going to make yourself as resistance free as possible, which means struggle less, face problems less, try to solve problems less, daydream more, criticize less, praise more, laugh more. It's so simple to hook up with who your inner being is.
On that, there's one question that's on the end of what you said, and that's on the you can be, do, or have anything you want, which is a mantra for me, and I'm getting more and more to where I believe it. There's the case of, let's say Elsie had her transition, and you're wanting Elsie there. And do you have to stretch the you or the want or the have to include, because from the human perspective, that version of Elsie is, the spirit, I can, contact, my version.
Well, Elsie wasn't here today, but did you feel her?
Yes.
And Esther feels the joy of her when she thinks about her.
Yes.
Whether she's there or not. So you're right. You do have to be willing to feel the vibration of it rather than have the dependency on seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to get to, was just that change in perspective on that definition, because it's easy to take
The more you hook up with your inner being, the more you will understand that it's all vibrational. And the more that you understand that it's all vibrational, the more you will look for the Elsies and the Jerrys where they are, not where they were. Esther woke up in the night and wrote that in her iPhone as the title of the book. Look for me where I am, not where I was. Because when you get into this vibrational world, then you don't lose access to anything that you care about. Look for yourself where you are, not where you were. Now hear this. Current manifestation is were. Current manifestation is past tense. So look at where you are, not where you were. But you got to understand, you all understand right now, don't you? This conversation is taking you there. You are vibrational beings and you are there. And so when you look where you are, now you're acting in your vibrational being rather than reacting to what was. And when you react constantly to what was, you recreate what was. So your manifestations keep reflecting what was, and you don't recognize any progress. This was a really good conversation, and this is a really good time for a segment of reflection.